A long time ago, more than 300,000 years ago, a group of people came to this world from someplace else. They weren't human people. They looked more like big lizards, and they were a whole lot smarter than humans. And they came from a star in what you know is the belt of the archer Orion. And because they live hundreds of thousands of years, going someplace for 100,000 years to study something, 100,000 of your years, doesn't seem like a big deal to them. It's no more than a biologist going to spend 10 years living with apes to learn about ape behavior. You have biologists in your world who've done that. And they came here because humanity was awakening its sentience. They were going from the animal level to the ability to think. And they wanted to study a species going through that. So they picked some of their very best people and sent them here. And those people stayed and studied for a very long time. The thing is, there's something funky about your world. And since we're already talking about ETs and the scientific types who have already shut this off, I don't have to be cautious about my words. This thing is a scientific thing, this peculiar thing about your world. It's a kind of energy that flows in and changes everything so often. Kind of like a place that's very dry part of the year and then has torrential rains and then the rest of the year dries out, and so it has this weird cycle. And this energy you could call magic. It's not exactly, but it allows you to, if you're paying attention to it, use it to shape the world around you. And it's all the things that humans have called magic. Well, most of the things humans have called magic are things derived from working with this energy. And because humans grew up here, they evolved here, they're kind of immune to this stuff. Right, this much crazy energy makes you a bit nutty. It's sort of like, the idea that everyone gets weird on a full moon. Police officers say they have a lot more arrests and crazy behavior on a full moon. And, scientists say this is preposterous. It doesn't actually happen. But anybody who works in an insane asylum or with, the criminal element or whatever will tell you. People get loony on a full moon. The word loony, crazy, comes from the word for moon, lunar. It's a bit like that. Every several thousand years, you get sort of a full moon of this energy that makes you all a little nutty for a while. But you can handle it. These others coming from a different place where they didn't have any emotion, they couldn't handle it. And they went a bit nuts. And over a few thousand years, as that energy faded, they regained some of their stability. And they thought that was really awful. Let's avoid that. And a few thousand years later, it came back, and they all went a bit nutty again, and did stupid things that they regretted. And then it faded, and they were normal again. And they started looking for ways to protect themselves from this energy when it came back. And some of the earliest pyramids that were built on this planet were built because of this energy. The shape of them and the gold top were meant for splitting and diverting this energy, so somebody sitting down in the center of the pyramid could be untouched. They're not for burying dead Egyptians. And a lot of the mythologies about aliens coming to this world because they wanted gold. There are a lot of stories told by different ones of your people in literature and folks who think they're actually writing nonfiction. They talk about aliens being hungry for gold and coming here to get it. Well, the idea was that gold could somehow help diffuse this energy, and so they were hungry for it, but basically to protect themselves from going mad. But each time it happened, they went more and more crazy. And they ended up building cities out of gold, or giant pyramids made of gold, or pyramids with gold caps. Generally, the pyramids with gold caps were sort of human homage to them, 100,000, 200,000 years later. But this is what they were doing. You can find pyramids on other planets than just this one, because for them, once you've crossed the galaxy, hopping between planets was a pretty small jump. And each time it happened, they went a little bit crazier. And towards the end, they managed to... Towards the end of their time, when they were more and more nutty, they began to directly affect human society. They set themselves up as gods of different groups. They used the people as slaves. In their competition with one another, they had their human army go and kill off another human army, and this is where your stories, even biblical stories of God coming down and saying, go in this land and kill all the people, because they were playing a stupid, violent sort of chess game where they were raising up their armies and sending them to kill off the armies of others. And in time, they got crazy enough that they began to kill each other. In their society, for a number of reasons, murder is impossible. When you kill someone, the connection they all share causes great pain to everybody and kills you. So murder was always suicide, and folks just didn't do it. But they managed to start killing off one another. And it got down to the place not that long ago in your history where there were but two of them left. And they were both utterly mad. One female and one male. And she traditionally set herself up as a goddess. She used a lot of illusion so she could look like whatever she needed to for the people. She didn't want to look like some alien thing. She set herself up as a goddess of beauty, of love, and of war. And you wouldn't think those would go together. By love, she usually meant sex. Sometimes she covered motherhood in there, but she usually just meant a goddess of sex and a goddess of war. And if you look at the set of characteristics that are represented by a number of these goddesses through history, you'll find many of the masks she has worn. Asherah, Astarte, Ishtar. There's a huge number that you can pop up through history that all have the same characteristics. And she always represents those same things. She stimulates the sexual energies in people because that makes them most dynamic and aggressive. And then she's also the goddess of the hunt or the war, of death, of slaughter. And she always sets herself up as beautiful and, caring about the people, but she's always vicious. People are always scared of her. And he set himself up as a sort of father figure, but he's always misogynist in his cultures that he rules. Women are always kept as a lower class or even as slaves. This is because she basically uses the women. And so in all the cultures he set up, he wanted to take the power away from the women. And these two, the cultures, fought one another. And you can see these battles through history. The Europeans in your own history worshipped a goddess with a sort of consort who died and was reborn every year, so he was irrelevant. And the march of Christianity across Europe is one of the most recent and the one that you know best. Instantiation of this God-father figure who is the male coming in and trying to wipe out the worship of the female figure. And this has happened again and again through tens of thousands of years. These two fighting their stupid fights. And you can find gods or goddesses all over the world who tend to have one of these two characteristics. And they're almost always the same. The god, the father figure who's savage and vicious and warlike, or the goddess of sex and violence who's vicious and cruel. It's not that. And this matters to you for a lot of reasons, but the biggest reason is one of the strongest forces in your world today is religion. And if you look at the religions, all of the dominant religions in your world worship the same God the Father figure, who is a father figure but savage and warlike, encourages people to go out and cause war, and he's very misogynist. And it's clearly this same individual that is the root of all these things. And this ugly creature and the ugly mists that have come out of it are ones that still dominate your world. And if you're not aware of that, you're going to be raised in one of these religious traditions and say, but it's true, it has to be true, because I was told it's true since I was a baby. And I say, yes, you were told Santa Claus was true, but that's a lie. This is just a much more vicious and destructive lie. So people need to become aware of this. How do they become aware of this? It's not like you can go up and tell them. You're Yahweh. He's a lizard alien who's been fucking with humans for a long time. They're not going to listen very closely to you. So they need, in the global unconscious, a growing awareness of powerful ancient entities that are vicious and cruel, that have been manipulating your world. And these stories are starting to show up. And the folks doing this generally are the folks on my side of this. Now understand that there are two sides. There's folks that want to bring humans into an age of light, and ones that want to drive them into darkness and slavery. And while that's a little simplistic, it's actually pretty valid. And you can go and watch the movies from Hollywood over the last 50 years. And a lot of them are kind of neutral, just somebody trying to make money. But you can pick out distinct examples of these people, they're holding the energy of the shadow. These people are holding the energy of the light. And it's not always clear which is which. Right? One of the most remarkable I saw many years ago when I was in Hawaii was a movie called Triple X. Brain dead movie. I mean, there's no intellect or plot. It's a bunch of sexy people getting in fights and driving fast cars. It's blowing shit up. Right? But as I watched that movie, I felt something in my gut start to relax and open. And a little further, something in my third chakra started to relax and open. And towards the end of that movie, something in my heart started to relax and open. And I looked around the theater and it was happening to everybody. Right? My side was using this stupid brainless movie full of violence and explosions to open people's hearts. And it was such a beautiful thing. It really astounded me. Right? And sometimes you see movies that seem to be really nice that have a horrible energy that are made, to mislead or abuse people. Well, it's true of more things than just movies. Last night I looked at a single clip from a video game called Tomb Raider Legends. And in just the 30 seconds or so that I watched of it, Lara walked into a place that was King Arthur's tomb. And King Arthur and his knights were buried there. And she said, whoa, you mean this is a true story? And the person she's talking to on her radio says, well, if you look around the world, there are these images of a sword in a dais or a block of stone all over the world. It's as if some race that was far more than humans scattered these around the world with the specific effort of, or desire to, pick who would be the leader and thus control the politics of your world. And I thought, whoa, this is a really stupid game. I've ignored Tomb Raider because it's obnoxious and violent and stupid. But here, the one clip I see, they're saying, hey, there are some people who are far smarter than you, who live a very long time, who are using a very high level of technology to pick out who's going to be the leader in your world and thus control world politics. And so out of curiosity, I found a playlist of a Tomb Raider video, and it turned out to be a different one. It's the most recent, the 2013 one. And the story that they eventually discover as you play through this game is that in this island there was a goddess who lived an impossibly long time, and because of something they couldn't understand, she could control the weather and control storms and control plant growth, some sort of very high level of technology. That she had a whole lot of followers, that her followers went into battle riding on the winds. And that while her people loved her because she was a goddess of love, she was also a goddess of violence. violence, and her people were scared of her. And she had a lot of acolytes she kept around her. And the story she told them is that she was human. And when she would die, one of her acolytes would take over. But the story you find out right towards the end is that she's basically immortal. And when it came time for, the leader to die, she would just take over the body of the next one. Now, from what I know of this one, she would have just killed that one and then used some sort of illusion to use the form of that one. But that same goddess had controlled this place for a vastly long time and made it powerful so that no enemies anywhere in the world could touch them, and used people who could ride the winds, who could, fly, and used control of the weather and nature to make her people powerful. And that even though she was so wonderful, people were all scared. And as you go, you start finding notes from her priestesses about how something about her is really wrong and really evil, but they're afraid to say anything because they'll be killed. And the last thing you find out is that she's not dead. She's just really weakened for whatever reason and kind of crazy and stuck there, still causing trouble in the world. And that, you have to make an effort to see if you can find a way to finally rid the world of this person. What they have done is basically tell the story of one of these two gods, the god and goddess pair. The vicious goddess of war and love, who ruled with powerful technology, who, though she was a thing of great beauty and required worship from her people, she was actually also a thing of great savagery, and people were scared of her. And how she's not dead. How she's simply grown weak, and she's still in the background and still influencing things. And so I only know now there are, I think, 11 Tomb Raider games. I only know of 2 of them. But both of them are telling the story of this ancient god and goddess, of this powerful extraterrestrial group who's been using magic in their seemingly infinitely long lives to control the politics of your world and create wars and, drive the development of cultures. Something that you guys need to be aware of, that I just explained you need to be aware of. And the Tomb Raider games, vastly successful. There's a huge number of them now. I don't know that they all do this because I haven't checked them all. But of the 2 I checked, they both very accurately tell the stories of this god and goddess. They both build the awareness of it in you, so that when someone does eventually come out and say, hey, here's the story, hundreds of millions of children and young people around the world will say, well, of course, that makes sense. That's the same as Tomb Raider. And so it may not be obvious because it's a game of insane violence. Killing hundreds of people and rivers of blood and piles of bones and mangled bodies all over the place. It's a really ugly, violent game. It's just like the XXX movie. It's using all this violence and explosions and such to get you in. But once you're in, it's telling you a story. It's shaping your energy. And so there's something very fascinating about the Tomb Raiders. And they probably deserve greater attention. Because if the first one I saw, which clearly from its graphics was many years ago, and this one, which is just last year, are both doing this, then clearly the same person or group of people have been working with these the whole time. And so they probably all deserve notice. There's probably something very amazing and powerful going on with the Tomb Raider stuff. So if you don't know about them or want to check out their stories, I encourage you to check them out. I also encourage you to look around for other iterations, modern instantiations of these ancient stories, of the god and goddess pair, of, as the Christian Bible says, Yahweh and his Asherah, and how they controlled the world. Another of the names that she used was Europa, for which this entire continent is named. And another is Columbia, for which the entire U.S. is dedicated. The Statue of Liberty is an image of Columbia. The ruling center is called the District of Columbia. And there are images of this goddess Columbia all over the United States. So she is still involved and still shaping the world. And so it's a useful thing to be aware of. And these, the Tomb Raider games, they seem to be building that awareness.